John Rambo, a drifter, just passing through their town.
Morning! Headed north or south?
North.
Now jump in. I'll make sure you're heading the right direction, huh?
You got someplace I can eat around here?
There's a diner about 30 miles up the highway.
Is there any law against me getting something here?
Yeah, me. I want you to book this gentleman for vagrancy, resisting arrest, carrying a concealed weapon.
They knew he was innocent.
Starting to dislike you. A lot.
And they didn't give a damn.
That's okay, Warren. Don't worry about the soap. He's tough. Just shave him. Rock.
Don't move. I don't want you to cut your own throat.
John Rambo, one man who's been pushed too far.
You're finished! You've gone as far as you're gonna go! Heading straight for the top. Right on top of him. There's no way out of here except through us.
He was hunted. Trapped.
There he is! On the cliff!
And forced to fight back.
Don't push it. Don't push it. I'll give you a war you won't believe.
Teasel, you and all your men couldn't handle him before. Now, what makes you think you can handle him now?
Because God knows what damage he's prepared to do.
You don't seem to want to accept the fact that you're dealing with an expert in guerrilla warfare.
Are you telling me that 200 men against your boy is a no-win situation for us?
You send that many, don't forget one thing. A good supply of body bags.
Sylvester Stallone. This time, he's fighting for his life. First Blood.
Welcome to the latest episode of the B-Movie Club. I'm your host, Kevin. This week we're discussing the 1982 action classic, First Blood, starring Sylvester Stallone, Brian Dennehy, Richard Crenna. It's an all-star cast. For those of you joining us for the first time, each week on the B-Movie Club, I discuss certain guilty pleasures and forgotten classics of the past. Go to our page on Facebook, Original B-Movie Club, and give us the big thumbs up. Then go to our page on YouTube and subscribe at KD9575. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at The B-Movie Club. You do that, you get all the latest updates whenever I post a new video, any kind of B-movie-ish links. You get it first, okay? Don't forget to spread the word. The more the merrier, I always say. First Blood. In this movie, John Rambo is a kind of displaced Vietnam vet who's kind of just a drifter. He's suffering from some kind of post-traumatic stress issues due to the horrors of the war. He's come to this Pacific Northwest city called Hope, ironically, to track down one of the last members of his unit. The rest of his unit all died in the war. And when he gets there, he discovers his last friend from the war is dead. So he's very distraught. He's just kind of wandering through town. And the local sheriff sees him looking a little disheveled and picks him up and offers to drive him essentially to the city limits. You know, here's where you want to go, I'll take you there. Just basically, I want you out of my town. You know, we got a nice, clean family town here. We don't need a bunch of shiftless drifters roaming in, homeless people. It's a sad situation. So Rambo, as you might imagine, doesn't appreciate getting pushed around. So he defies the sheriff and proceeds to walk right back into town again. At this point, the sheriff arrests him for vagrancy, you know, for resisting arrest. He's just not in a happy mood. The sheriff arrests him, So they take him back to prison. Rambo doesn't really resist all this much, but as this is going on, he's kind of going into like this catatonic fugue state where he's just not answering questions and he's having these flashbacks. And the deputies at the police station are like, start messing with him essentially. They think he's just some kind of a burnout or mental defective of some sort, which isn't very nice. So they try to clean him up with a fire hose. They're about to dry shave him with a straight razor when finally John Rambo snaps, beats up the cops, and escapes, runs off. And one of the deputies, a guy named Galt, who was really the prime instigator of the mistreatment of Rambo, goes out and chases him down, essentially gets a rifle and is about to shoot him. The Sheriff Teasel stops him. He's like, okay, we still have to arrest him though. So they go after him. They chase him up into the forest. They send the helicopter after him. Rambo at this point is starting to come to his senses, like, oh, this is not a good situation. But he's a trained veteran, so he can survive in the forest. He can do certain things. While they're chasing him, Galt has flipped his wig and is now just trying to shoot Rambo on sight, which is fairly ridiculous. And in the course of defending himself, Galt's up in the helicopter shooting at Rambo. Rambo throws a rock, quite an army he's got there, hits the helicopter, which causes the helicopter pilot to kind of shift, and Galt falls out of the helicopter and plummets to his death. Okay? At this point, the rest of the police arrive who haven't seen what's gone down, and they just see Galt just laying there dead. So now they're after Rambo for murder now. Now it is a shoot-to-kill situation. He says, I didn't want to hurt anybody, it was all a big mistake, and of course they're shooting at him. And over the course of this, they're after him. Rambo starts setting up these traps in the forest, and one by one takes out the rest of the police officers using violent but not deadly force. And he gets so close to Teasel, the sheriff, he has his knife, big old Bowie knife or whatever, is to the guy's throat. And he says, like, I could have killed all of you. Don't push it, big guy, or something like that. That's my Sylvester Stallone impression, by the way. So Teasel's, oh my goodness. But regardless, he calls the National Guard to hunt down Rambo. About this time, this colonel shows up named Colonel Troutman. He says, I trained Rambo. I trained him to be the best, all this good stuff. And he says, I'm not here to save Rambo from you. I'm here to save you from Rambo. And he lists off all his decorations. He was special forces. He was all these decorations. He was a sniper. He could, do whatever, all these sorts of things. There's no way a bunch of, hayseed cops are going to be able to do anything. So, but Troutman is here like, I want to try to talk him down, get him to surrender so there's no more bloodshed. So he talks to Rambo on the phone. Rambo's like, basically, I'm going radio silence, Colonel, kind of thing. He's still now he's like full-blown into like a weird flashback mode here. So I don't want to spoil everything. I don't want to give it all away. It's one man, Vietnam veteran John Rambo versus, the National Guard, the state police, the local police. It's very upsetting. So what can I tell you about this movie? This book was written, originally was a book called First Blood by David Morrell. It was a very famous book, like in the early 70s. It had this different tone. Over the years, Rambo's kind of become just kind of a stereotypical action character where you shoot him up. But in the book, and indeed even in this movie, he's more of a misunderstood character. Again, dealing with post-traumatic stress and, being kicked around as a veteran, those kind of issues is what we're dealing with in this one. And it was successful and went on to spawn additional books. So they optioned, they wanted to make this movie. Now, a bunch of different directors passed through it. A bunch of different casting ideas were passed around. At one point, they had like, Burt Reynolds was going to play Rambo, Dustin Hoffman, Al Pacino, Chris Christopherson. A bunch of different people were going to play the Colonel Troutman, including like Gene Hackman and Lee Marvin, those kind of guys. Kirk Douglas was going to play it. A lot of people dropped out. Eventually, they settled on Sylvester Stallone, who was a big star from all the Rocky movies. But little known fact, all of his non-Rocky movies were pretty much flops. You know, if they were lucky, they broke even. So he was kind of a 50-50 proposition. But he came in there and he rewrote the script a bunch of times. And because initially Rambo was supposed to kill like 16 people over the course of the thing, and they felt like they wanted him to be more misunderstood and less like psychotic. So really, there's only one death in the course of this movie, and it's kind of Rambo incidentally caused it. Again, he throws the rock and it hits the helicopter, and the guy falls out of the helicopter. Versus he has a rocket launcher and he blows up anything, you know, like they did in like Rambo 3, for example. Yeah, by Rambo 3, he had explosive tipped arrowheads and he's blowing things up, and that wasn't what they were going for in this. Okay, it has that First Blood has that reputation, but it's really not that kind of movie. Again, they eventually settled on Sylvester Stallone. Kirk Douglas, like I said, was going to play a role, but in the book, Rambo dies at the end. He commits suicide, like realizing, like, kind of, you know, I've been made into this monster and there's no turning back. They didn't want to do that in this one. They felt it was too depressing. So it's like at the end, spoiler alert, he does not commit suicide. He turns himself in. One point, Colonel Troutman was supposed to be the villain of this story. Like, he'd created this loose cannon Rambo, and, you know, he's Dr. Frankenstein kind of thing. And they rewrote that, where it's like, you know, Colonel Troutman's kind of conflicted about things. Brian Dennehy, who played the sheriff, Sheriff Teasel, he kind of starts one way and he gets kind of conflicted. You get the sense that the sheriff, he kind of made some bad decisions, and it was his bad decisions he begins to realize that kind of forced this to go down a certain way, where he was dealing with things he didn't understand. And Rambo, like I said, was this largely sympathetic figure who's like, you know, I'm a Vietnam veteran, and like many veterans, I was kind of discarded by society. I'm misunderstood, and I'm pushed, and I react violently. But regardless, I'm not like a mad dog killer type. I don't really kill anybody. So it's all this, you know, it's a very deep thing that they're going for here. So they rewrote it, made him more sympathetic, made Sylvester Stallone. What was funny is, after they finished filming this movie, it was like a 3-hour film, and Stallone was like, this thing is going to be a career killer. This is going to be the worst thing I've ever done. And at one point he attempted to buy the print just so he could destroy it. Now the studio wouldn't let him do that, and he said, okay, fine. Well then, if you're going to do it, cut it down, cut my parts down, so it's just a lot of like, you know, other people reacting to what I'm doing, and, you know, I'm just in the forest kind of doing my thing, but you don't see as much as me as you would have otherwise. So they did that, and that kind of, you know, that defined what they were doing there. And of course it became a huge hit. Mixed reviews initially, although in retrospect, these same reviewers came back years later and gave it positive reviews, because it really is, it's really a well-written, well-put-together thing. Totally different than Rambo 2 and Rambo 3, which are just unwatchable. They're horrible. And that by the time he's doing that, he's just gunning people. He goes to Vietnam to rescue POWs. And then in the third one, he goes to Afghanistan to take on the Russian army single-handedly. Anyway. But it defined this kind of role. I mean, a few years later, Chuck Norris was starring in these blatant Rambo ripoffs, like Missing in Action and things like that. But like, so these became, along with Rocky, Rambo became his other kind of defining 80s role. So what are you going to do? Like I said, you've got Stallone, you've got Brian Dennehy as the sheriff, you've got Richard Crenna as Colonel Troutman. And then if you look close, you see David Caruso as one of the sheriffs. He's actually in quite a bit of it, but it's kind of funny seeing young David Caruso splattered through this. This movie currently has an 87% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. If you're going to watch any of the Rambo movies, and I actually haven't seen the new one, newish one. It was called just John Rambo or Rambo. Came out 5 years ago or so. I haven't seen that one. And allegedly there's a new one coming out called Rambo: The Last Stand. So it's like the final chapter. If you're going to watch any of these movies, you got to watch First Blood. First Blood is great. I highly recommend it. It's not what you think it is. Okay, it's an action film, but there's more layers to it. I had actually never, it's the only one I'd actually sat all the way through up until recently. A couple weeks ago I said, oh, all 3 movies are on Netflix, so I figure I'll watch, Rambo First Blood Part 2 and Rambo 3, and they fall off a cliff after this one, in my opinion. So what are you going to do? So check it out. Let me know what you think. Send in any questions, comments, favorite scenes, favorite quotes, and I may talk about it on the show. Next week, moving away from Rambo, and we're going to be doing the hit, Academy Award-winning, thrilling Silence of the Lambs with Anthony Hopkins, Jodie Foster, Scott Glenn. It's an all-star cast. It is streaming instantly on Netflix, so rush out and check that out. Don't forget to go to our page on Facebook, Original B Movie Club. Give us the thumbs up. Subscribe to my page on YouTube. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at The B Movie Club. As you know, I end every episode with a totally out of context quote. And here it is. He could eat things that make a billy goat puke. That was Colonel Troutman describing all the skills that Rambo has. And evidently an important one is that he could eat anything. So, good times had by all. So thank you for joining us. Next week, The Silence of the Lambs. Be well.